Who knew that a tiny egg could inspire massive change? In the 1950s, a company by the name of General Mills introduced a new product into the market, named Betty Crocker. Now, Betty Crocker was, right, sorry, I apologize. Now, Betty Crocker was pre-made cake mix. All you had to do is add some water and throw it into the oven. For some reason, though, the product wasn't doing very well. People weren't buying it. As a result, General Mills brought in a team of psychologists to analyze the situation, only to have them conclude that due to the simplicity of the instructions, people felt uneasy using it. People felt off, right? Now, so what General Mills decided to do was they went with an unconventional, counterintuitive solution. Confusingly, they actually made the Confusingly, they actually made the instructions more difficult. In addition to water, one would now have to add oil and an egg. Now, it actually rebranded the product to have the slogan on the box, just add an egg. Now, that might have you asking, do you think it worked? No. No, the product, this trick didn't just work. There was a 200% increase in sales. The profits tripled. Now, I would like to say that I'm quite content, quite happy, knowing that a company in the 1900s, an era of great ignorance, again, racism, wars, gender inequality, martyr, was able to recognize the significance of psychology and use it to its advantage. This advancement would not have been possible if not for two iconic figures. Sigmund Freud, Austrian neurologist and father of psychoanalytic practices, and his nephew, Edward Bernays, who then took the psychoanalytic theories and applied them to public relations, including but not limited to campaigns, propaganda, and marketing. These two figures are why I am here on the stage today, and these two figures are the basis of Freudian marketing. What is Freudian marketing, you ask? Let me try something with you. Let's say you had the ability to, or you were given the choice to, attend one of two events. Right? One of which would be for $5, the other for $20, both of which you will get to attend for free. Which one do you feel more compelled to attend? Again, you have option one, option two, $5 event and $20 event. Now, I think all of us would go for the $20 event since that has more value, right? And that is secretly the one I wanted to sell anyway. Right? And that is Freudian marketing. While it includes a vast, wide array of theories, I would like to focus on only two of them. Psychoanalytic theory and usability theory. Now, what psychoanalytic theory does is it takes each and every one of us, each individual, and separates them into three selves: the id, the superego, and the ego. Now, the id, it stands for our desires and cravings, the things we want. I do make it sound a little dark, but it is important to remember that it also stands for your ambitions and aspirations. Then there is the superego, which the best way to explain this one is through example. Have you ever been through an awkward social interaction? Like maybe you wished a friend goodbye and then like walked in the same direction as them, trying not to make eye contact, right? Maybe you've accidentally liked someone's picture on Instagram or Facebook from 2018. The reason you feel this wave of discomfort wash over you, the reason you feel this social guilt or this instant regret is because of your superego. Now, your superego stands for your perfectionist moral selves. Whenever you're not good enough in its eyes, it will punish you through this feeling we call awkward. Next, we have the ego. Now, the ego, not to be confused with the English connotation referring to pride, the ego in this scenario would be balance. It would balance out between your id and superego. Now, it would keep the id satiated and your superego from becoming self-destructive. It's also important to note that your ego is the most socially aware, as in if you had only listened to your id or superego, you'd be avoided by society, but the ego keeps you in like a shape or a form in which you can fit into your community. I would argue that most people are about 30% ego and 35% both id and superego. One way that psychoanalytic theory is used through marketing is through advertisements. Now, advertisements are made specifically to appeal to your id, since that's the part of you that wants and craves. That's the part of you that can be convinced to buy something. One example of that is in soda company ads during holidays, namely Ramadan here in Egypt. They always portray the product in this happy family, this friend group that's spending quality time with each other. Right? This links the product to the sense of communion, this desire to belong or need to fit in, right? Which again appeals to your id. That concludes psychoanalytic theory. The next Freudian marketing theory I'd like to get to is usability theory. Now, usability theory, what it does is it takes any product and rates it out of 3 criteria: efficiency, effectiveness, and satisfaction. Right? Now, we use these terms in our day-to-day lives. I'm sure we've all heard of them and we've all used them, but I don't think we've taken the time to actually conceptualize what they mean. Now, simply put, efficiency would be having the least resource input for any successful output, as in putting in the least amount of effort, the least amount of time, and the least amount of attention for a successful output. And effectiveness would be putting in as much effort and as much time and as much attention as is required to achieve the best output or the best result. For example, let's say you just finished working on a lovely Word document, an article, an essay, whichever, and you want to turn off your laptop or computer. There are those of us who would hold down the power button until the computer abruptly and suddenly turns off, risking system file corruption and losing any unsaved data. And then there are those of us who would go to the control center and turn it off from there, avoiding the little problems and issues I just mentioned. The option A, the power button, would be considered efficient, again, least amount of time and effort and attention for a successful result, which is a turned off computer. Option B would be considered effective, as in it achieved the best result. Another example would be apple slicers. Who here used an apple slicer before? Raise your hand if you have. Right? Okay, a decent amount of us. Now, those who have used an apple slicer before should know that not all apples are symmetrical. Not all apples fit into the apple slicer, not perfectly. Again, it would give you a successful result, which is a cut apple, but it would not be a cleanly cut apple. Then there are those of us who would spend a little more time, a little more effort, and a little more attention using a knife. And a knife would give them a clean cut, exactly what they desire, and would give them versatility to cut it in several shapes. Now that we've talked about the efficiency and effectiveness, I'd like to get into satisfaction. Satisfaction asks 2 main questions about the product. Is the product satisfying your needs, and is the product satisfying to use? Right. In 2015, Apple released a digital stylus called the first generation Apple Pencil. And while the first generation Apple Pencil was able to satisfy customer needs, as in it did all a stylus is supposed to do, the first generation Apple Pencil was not satisfying to use. It had an oblong, awkward shape. It was too thick. It was too heavy. And the charging position was a nightmare. And again, while it could achieve a wonderful result, it was just an awful experience. In 2018, though, Apple released a second generation Apple Pencil. The second generation Apple Pencil was catered specifically to customer desires and customer wants. And it had this natural pencil-like feel that every artist or writer was going for. That concludes usability theory. Now, as you might have already figured out by now, psychology plays an important part within marketing, right? Through Freudian concepts, again, I only mentioned 2. There's more, but psychology doesn't just have roots within marketing. Psychology talks about people. Psychology is all about people. I'll ask you one last question. What color would you assign the English subject? Like, if English, the idea of English, was an object, what color would it have? Okay, what about math? Okay. Now, I myself would go bright red for English and dark blue for math. Some of you might feel the same way. Some of you might feel differently. But the thing is, we've all got an answer. We all have an answer, and we're all convinced that this answer is correct. Some of us might even argue for this answer, which, again, has no basis in reality whatsoever. Psychiatrist Carl Jung once said, it all depends on how we look at things and not how they are in themselves. It doesn't matter whether you saw blue or green or yellow or orange or purple. Right? What matters is what that color says about you and what that tells you about you. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you.